All right, hello everybody, and welcome to today's online lecture preview on Introduction to Econometrics with Dr. Seyhan Erden, hosted by the Columbia University Summer Session. My name is Megan O'Donovan. I'm an academic affairs specialist working with our continuing education programs at Columbia University School of Professional Studies. With that said, I am pleased to introduce Jessica Yan, the director of Columbia University Summer Session.
Thanks so much, Megan. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're coming from. I see a lot of international students joining us today. I want to get us started with just some introductions. So joining us today, we have Assistant Director of Academic Affairs, Clara Fong, our Program Coordinator, Brett Solgenhop, and Senior Admissions Counselor, David Taylor Tumlincy. A big thank you to Angie Freer from the events team. She's in the background helping us with our presentation today. We all work very closely to administer a robust summer term and programming here at Columbia, where we offer over 300 courses across 50 different subject areas. The majority of our students are our very own Columbia undergraduates, but we're also pleased to offer these courses to visiting students like you. Prospective students have the opportunity to select from our catalog of courses ranging from the arts and humanities, social justice, and pre-med and the sciences. Today, we're pleased to be hosting our third webinar in a multi-part lecture series where we invite students to experience Columbia by previewing our courses with our faculty. We're honored to have Professor Seyhan Erden join us today to discuss her economics course, Introduction to Econometrics, and allow you to experience what it's like to be a student inside our classrooms. Professor Erden has been teaching economics courses at Columbia University since 2010. Her focus is on econometrics, macroeconometrics, and applied econometrics. She serves as our departmental representative, helping us to create the summer course offerings for the economics department. Dr. Erden holds a BA in economics from Bogazici University in Istanbul, Turkey. Her master's and Ph.D. degrees are from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Once again, please join me in welcoming Dr. Erden, and I'll hand it over to her.
Thank you, Jess. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the series and also welcome to the Introduction to Econometrics course. This course is a required course for the economics major and for any major that goes with economics and a double major that goes with economics. So it is because it's required. If you are in economics, you do have to take it. But will you be able to take it if it's not required? Of course you can. But does people do that? I have very few students, and it has been increasing lately, because it is a very useful course. And I try to make the course as applied as possible, not too much theory. So you're going to find out if you take it, you're going to find out that the applications that you learn in the course can be used in many other fields other than economics. Do you need to study a lot? The answer is yes, because it's a quantitative course and there are weekly problem sets. So it's a quant heavy and demanding course, but that's one reason that you may want to take it over the summer, because you don't take too many courses in the summer like you do in the fall and the spring. So a quant heavy course that you need to study a lot is perfect for the summer. Now, what is econometrics? The Oxford Dictionary definition of econometrics is economics that is concerned with the use of mathematical methods in describing economic systems. But the methods, as I said, that we're going to be learning in this course is not going to be applied in economics only. It's universal. So the objective of econometrics is to convert the qualitative statements like the relationship between these two variables are positive, into a quantitative statement like consumption expenditure increases by 95 cents per every dollar increase in disposable income. So here is a brief overview of the course. Usually in economics courses, we do talk about relationships and the policy implications of those relationships, but we never suggest quantitative magnitudes of causal effects. In this course, we're going to do that. We're going to suggest quantitative magnitudes of the causal effects. For example, if I do a master's degree, how much would my income increase in the future? Or what is the elasticity of certain product? Or Federal Reserve now increased the interest rate. If it increases that again, what's going to happen to the output? Things like that. So we're going to actually quantify these relationships. And the major concern in social sciences like economics is that you don't have experimental data. When you do not have experimental data, you are going to use observational data. And there are problems with using observational data. First of all, it's never random. It's never randomly collected. So what we're going to be doing is solving the problems of using observational data. And how can we use observational data and still estimate the relationships between variables? So in this course, you will learn methods of estimating causal effects. And then that's one portion of the course. The other portion is you're going to be able to make predictions. Or if you're using time series data, prediction is called forecasting. You're going to be able to do forecasting. So we're going to focus on applications. Theory is only used as needed to understand whys of the method. And you're going to be able to learn and evaluate the regression analysis that are done by others, like be able to read and understand empirical economics papers. And you will have hands-on experience with a program, a software like Stata or R. We're going to, in the problem sets, you will always use one of those softwares, and we will assume that you have never used them. So we will teaching assistants to teach these to you. So you don't have a prior experience with any of these softwares. So let's do an application. Let's use something that is important for the policymakers as an application and figure out how we use econometrics in that. So the empirical problem here, which could be a problem for a policymaker, it could be a problem for parents-teacher association, it could be a problem for superintendent of a school system. So we're going to ask this question: is there an effect, a significant effect of the class size, how many teachers per students, or sorry, how many students per teacher on the educational output? Now we're going to have to quantify educational output. So to quantify educational output, we're going to use a test score, a standardized test score. So the variables we have, just two variables to start with. So this is really simple right now. We have student-teacher ratio, and we're suggesting that student-teacher ratio may have some causal effect on test scores. So let's look at this table. In statistics, so a prerequisite for this course is statistics. In statistics, you learn things like this. You learn what's the average, what's the standard deviation, what are the percentiles. And we have two variables, student-teacher ratio and test score. If you look at this, one may think that there is a relationship between these two, and may think that as student-teacher ratio increases, going from left to right, test score increases as well. But that's actually not correct, because this table doesn't tell us anything about the relationship between test score and student-teacher ratio, right? Let's look at it again. It just separately looks at student-teacher ratio and gives us information about it, what's the average, standard deviation, and the percentiles. And it also looks separately at test score. So how are we going to look at the relationship between these two? Here it is. we can graph it. We can put, this is actually California data. So each one of these dots represent a school district. For example, let's take this one right here. This school district has 15 students per teacher on average. And the average test score in that school district is about 700. So we have 420 of these. What do we do with that? Well, one first simple method is simple regression. But before simple regression, let's see what other things we can do. We are going to do estimation. We're going to look at hypothesis testing. Remember hypothesis testing from statistics? What we're looking at, is there a significant effect of student-teacher ratio on test score? And if there is, how much? How much is that, or within what limits? Within what limits is confidence interval. Remember all that? So one method is dividing the data into two. And by dividing the data into two, we can check whether the small class of, let's say, less than 20 students per teacher, we call it small class. More than 20 or more per teacher, we call it large class. And look at that difference. Okay, there is a difference. Average test score is 7.4 less for the small class. Is that significant? So we're going to have to, this delta is that 7.4 difference. So that's the estimation part. Now we're going to have to test. Is that 7.4 actually coming from a population? This is a sample. California is a sample coming from a population that has significant effect of student-teacher ratio on test score. And then we're going to construct a confidence interval. So that estimation is something that, again, you learn in statistics, but we're going to review it. So first 3 lectures of econometrics course is actually review of statistics. And then we're going to set up the hypothesis testing whether that difference is actually in the population is equal to 0 or not. And then finally, we are going to do the confidence interval. What does the confidence interval say? Well, this is coming from a population that the difference between small class, large class test score is going to be somewhere between 3.8 and 11 points. That doesn't include 0. So that's the same thing as saying we reject the hypothesis that the difference between small class and large class is actually 0. We reject that, which means that there is a significant effect of student-teacher ratio on test score. So how do we do this in econometrics? That was all statistics so far. How do we do that in econometrics? In econometrics, actually, we start with a linear regression. So here, X would be student-teacher ratio, and Y would be test score. And think about this, just a linear line. So this would be the intercept of that line, beta 0, and beta 1 would be the slope of the line. What's this then? This is called error. Error in the population or residual in the sample. So the error is something else that explains the variation in the test score, but it's not in this regression. What other things may explain the variation in the test score? In school districts, income of the district, outside education, parental help, they may all increase the test score of the students, right? But they're not in this regression. So they're hiding in the error, which are causing something we called omitted variable bias. So in that sense, we're going to go through all that at the beginning and figure out how can we make this regression look better. But for the simple regression line, the slope what we call beta 1, is actually giving us that information. If we can fit this and figure out the slope, what the slope is, in other ways, estimate the slope. If we can estimate the slope, we can figure out what is the effect of student-teacher ratio. We can actually say this. We can say a sentence like, one more student per teacher in a school district will decrease the test score. If it is negative, it's going to decrease. If it's positive, it's going to increase. Hopefully it will decrease, right? Will decrease the test score by X amount of points. So we will be able to do that. Here I explain what each variable is on the regression. So how do we do that? How do we do that estimation? Simply, what we actually do is we draw this line, this blue line, by figuring out a way to minimize the distance between each observation and the blue line. So depending on the number of observations, depending on where the observations are, the blue line will move up or down, or it will change its slope, right? So how can we do that for our specific example? Minimizing the error. I'm not going to go through the math of this for this presentation, but this is what actually we will do once we start regression. We're going to minimize. So you do need some calculus as well, taking the derivative and setting it equal to 0, solving it for beta 1 and beta 0 for the intercept and the slope. So minimizing that error basically means that we are going to find the estimator. And the estimator for the slope is this. The covariance between X and Y, our X was student-teacher ratio, Y was test score. So the sample covariance between student-teacher ratio and test score divided by the sample variance. And when we do that for our specific example, this is the result. So we do find a line that says, this is the relationship. What does this mean? Now I can say this. One more student per teacher will decrease test score by 2.28 points, or one less student per teacher in a school district will increase the test score by 2.28. Is this a good regression? So here is that explanation. One more student, one less student. Or you can, because it's linear, you can say two more students and multiply that number by 2. In this example, we do not have a meaning for the intercept, because generally intercept means if student-teacher ratio is 0, then the test score will be that. But if student-teacher ratio is 0, there is no student to take this test. So obviously it's not going to work in this example, but in many examples, it actually does. And here we are actually plugging in some school district in California, Antelope. We already know the student-teacher ratio. Let's estimate, although we know the test score, let's estimate the test score using our regression line. So we plug in the student-teacher ratio. This is not the causal effects part. This is the estimation part of the regression. And here is a typical result from a stata output that you will learn everything about this output if you take the course. And this is how we can write the result. And how does stata do that? Stata minimizes the distance between each school district and the regression line. That's how it finds this result. Then we need some measures to be able to say if this is a good regression or not a good regression. A simple regression will never be a good regression. We need multiple regression. We need nonlinear regression to be good. And we can see here that the results, for example, R square is something that needs to be between 0 and 1. It actually shows you how good the regression is. This means that only 5% of the variation in test score can be explained by student-teacher ratio. So that tells us there are many other things that we need to add. So if we look at the big picture, in every regression, there's always a variable that is important, a variable of interest. In this regression, the variable of interest was student-teacher ratio, but we realized that that's not the only thing that affects test score. We have to have other variables. So basically, the big picture is we want that variable of interest to be as correct as we want that slope of the variable of interest to be as correct as possible. And we also want to have the accurate standard errors for that so that it's useful, so that we can use to explain things. And the problems are the threats to unbiasedness, the problems that makes that number incorrect are listed here, which we will find a solution throughout the semester. And the problems that make standard errors inaccurate are listed here. But this is the big picture that I always put towards the end, because we first have to learn all of these, what these are and how we can correct them. So let's look, for example, the relationship between test score and income, school district income. The average income, let's say this is in $1,000, so this is about 20,000. And here is for that district, the test score is 640. Does this look like a linear line, like this one, the blue one? Explain that. It doesn't look like it. It looks more like a non-linear line will explain that. So that's one thing that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make sure that the functional form of the regression is correct. Or we can change the variables into their log forms. So these are all examples that we're going to be doing. And finally, I want to share with you some possibilities that explain student-teacher ratio. What you see on this table is you see 5 different regressions. And if, for example, percent English learner is empty here, which means that variable did not take place in the first regression. So this first regression is the regression that I actually showed you before. And it said that if we increase student-teacher ratio by 1 student, test scores decrease by that number, -228. Now we're adding some other variables. We add percent English learner, or we add percent eligible for subsidized lunch, or percent qualifying income. These are all examples of linear regression. We will also do nonlinear regression. We will also do, for example, cubic regression. Or we will do interactions between variables, interactions such that if I have a variable like high English learner versus low English, so this is high English learner, this is low English learner, how does that affect the slope of that regression line? So these are the kinds of things that we're going to be doing. And we're also going to compare different samples. For example, this is comparing Massachusetts to California. So if we do the same regression in Massachusetts, will we get the same result? Massachusetts is a very different state than California in terms of tests, in terms of student-teacher ratio, in terms of income levels, in terms of immigrants, percent English learners, and so forth. But interestingly enough, we get the same result, or not the same, but very similar result in Massachusetts with the linear regression, not with nonlinear, but with linear regression, we get very similar results. This is saying if I change the student-teacher ratio by 2 fewer students, I can increase test scores by 1.46 in California and by 1.28 in Massachusetts. So once again, these are the things that you're going to be learning in this class. You're going to look at causal effects, you're going to be doing predictions, you're going to do forecastings, and you will have a lot of applications. Thank you for listening. And let's start Q&A.
All right. Again, anybody, if you have any questions, please submit them now to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And Dr. Erden, thank you so much for that very thoughtful and detailed presentation. We do have a question I can get us started with. The first question is, how much calculus and linear algebra are students required to use in this course?
You don't need much linear algebra, but you do need calculus. You do need to take the first derivative, not even second derivative, but you do need the level to the first derivative and solve the first, set it equal to 0 and solve it for some variables. So that's the level.
Thank you. Another question we have is, in what kind of career fields do you know of that econometrics are most commonly used?
Many. Consulting is one major one. You can work at Fed, any of the Feds, depending on your other major, financial economics, like any banking, investment banking. So that was that I can think of.
Okay. Let me see. And what do you look for in a successful student in your course?
Well, if in my course, if you do the problem sets, you're successful. I mean, if you can do the problem sets, and we do help a lot with that. The teaching assistants start from assuming that you don't know anything about any of the software. So we teach from scratch, and then we apply those to real world problems. The problem sets have problems like the one that I discussed. So we give you the data and you run the data, you find the solution, and then you interpret the solution.
Great. So since we are using real world data on this, will students use maybe some current economic trends in the class to study?
Of course, yes. That would be time series, mostly time series part of the course. They can do stuff like, actually, that's one of the problem sets question. If Fed increases interest rates again by 0.25, what do you expect is going to happen to inflation by summer?
Okay, and I think, unless anybody else has any other questions, do have one more that's a bit more about you. Can you just tell us maybe, oh, hold on. Actually, I think this is a pretty good one about the course. What do you think is most interesting thing that you can learn in this course? This might be a personal preference, but.
That is a nice question. I mean, the most interesting thing for me that not interesting, but satisfying, I should say, that the students email me back once they find their job, once they graduate. They email me back and they say, this is the only course they really use at their jobs. So it was very useful. But of course, only those students email back. I'm sure there are other students who do not use it and don't email back, but it is very useful in the sense that it's not only economics. I mean, it's many other fields. In sports, medicine, psychology, law, you can use these methods, and people have been using it in other fields as well. So in that sense, it's interesting. You don't have to be an economist to take this course.
Great. And we just received another question. Do students have to collect the data on their own, or will that be provided to them?
Never. It will be provided. Or if there is one last question in the problem set just for practice, but I do give the link to get the data, and it's actually Federal Reserve of St. Louis who publishes this data, and it's available to everybody. So they do find they download it from that link, but otherwise, other than that, it's always provided.
And do you think a student who is not an economics major, will they be able to catch on to this course? Do you think it would be difficult for them to learn from scratch?
That you don't need economics background. You just need statistics to be able to take this course. Statistics is important, but you don't have to know what economics is even. I have, for example, a lot of engineering students, and so I know that for financial engineering, it's a required course. This is a required course, but there are a couple of other engineering that I cannot remember, but it's also required. But some engineering students are taking it even if it's not required for their major.
Wonderful, thank you. And I guess before we let you go, would you like to maybe give us a little walkthrough of your journey and how you got to where you are?
I wanted to be a teacher. I had no idea I was going to end up in economics. I ended up being a teacher, so I'm happy about that. In Turkey, when you are going to when you apply for a university, you have to enter a general exam, and then you list your preferences. So my preference was mathematics. It wasn't economics. My second preference was economics. I ended up in economics, but I'm happy. I'm doing the mathematics part of the economics. And then I came to this country for master's and Ph.D. And then I started working at New York University. Then I transferred to Columbia in 2010.
Thank you. And we did get an additional question coming in. I'll make a last call now for any questions for Dr. Erden. This question is just, will students learn casual inference such as difference and differences, regression, discontinuity, etc.?
Definitely, yes. So we're doing both. We're doing time series, cross-section, panel data. So in the cross-section part, you're learning difference and differences and regression discontinuity.
Great. And I think we will close out on this last question here. Do you have any tips for an economics student from Turkey or really any place outside of the US that is going to be continuing their studies here in the United States?
It all involves visa status and stuff. So I would recommend them to come to this country for graduate studies, definitely, or for undergrad if they can. And then once they graduate, they have certain amount of time. I think it's 36 months that they can work. So I would recommend them to do that all. It's a great experience. I came just like that and I ended up staying. I don't say that it's any better that they have to stay or not stay, but it worked out for me. So I ended up staying.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us again today. It was a pleasure to have you. And again, for all of our participants, we will be sharing this webinar with you all after today's session. So you can rewatch and revisit as you can. Okay. And so with that, we are going to move ahead with our admissions portion. So now I am going to pass this along to my colleague, Brett Slogenhop.
Thanks so much, Megan. And thank you again, Dr. Erden, for your great presentation. As Megan said, my name is Brett Slogenhop, and I'm the program coordinator for summer session. Over the next couple slides, I'm just going to briefly discuss the summer programs and what you can expect to kind of experience this upcoming summer. And then I'll pass it along to my colleague, David, who will discuss more in depth the application process as a visiting student. And then we'll end on a brief just Q&A covering the topics that we are both discussing. So summer 2022 will contain 3 main sessions. Summer X, the full summer term, will run May 23rd through August 12th. Summer A, the first 6 weeks, will run May 23rd through July 1st. And Summer B, the second 6 weeks, will run July 5th through August 12th. As a visiting student, you can choose to attend one session in either block or choose to join us for the full summer. Your visiting student application will remain the same regardless of the session that you choose to attend. These sessions are important to note just because the classes will run in a specific session. Those courses are posted on our summer website and the directory of classes at this time, and they'll all note that information therein. And for those interested in enrolling in Dr. Erden's course or similar classes this summer, I'll just briefly highlight some of the available programs and study options. So as a summer visiting student, you'll fall under a specific population that covers where you are currently, and then you'll apply to the program that best fits your needs. So you may be joining us as a visiting undergraduate or visiting graduate for those who are currently working towards their bachelor's or master's and attending university elsewhere. Post-baccalaureate studies are for those who have completed their degree and want to come back to study a new subject area. You can also take advantage of the opportunity to work with our great advising team to really help build up a robust summer curriculum with targeted coursework just to help prepare you either for a graduate program or just to generally take classes for professional development. We also have an Arts in the Summer program, which is open to all applicants. This is a truncated application process and intended only for those who really want to study in the arts such as theater, film, visual arts, or writing courses. We also have 3 summer-only certifications of professional achievement, which is really mainly intended for upper-level undergraduate, graduate, and post-baccalaureate individuals looking to focus on a specific area of study in the summer. And regarding our 3 summer-only CPAs, we have the Critical Issues in International Relations and United Nations Studies, both of which are offered through a partnership with the School of International Public Affairs, or SIPA. We also have the Human Rights Program, which is offered through a partnership with the Institute for the Study of Human Rights. Alongside those 3 summer-only CPAs, as I mentioned briefly, we have the Arts in the Summer program, as well as 2 intensive language programs. And I would just like to highlight some of the subject areas in which we do offer courses. As you can see on the screen, please note that our summer website, as well as the directory of classes, will list the individual classes that are being offered in these subject areas. Additional course details that you can find therein would be the sessions, as I mentioned previously, as well as the course days and times, the instructor attached to teach this course, as well as course descriptions, just to give you an idea of the content that will be covered throughout the summer. And in addition to Dr. Erden's course, I would just like to highlight a simple list of related econ and finance courses running this summer. Again, you can find additional classes in these subject areas. We offer around 20 math courses, a similar number of statistic courses, if you just want to kind of brush up on your information or learn a new subject area. And again, all of this can be found on our summer website. And if you do have any questions about the classes that are being offered, we do have our admissions counselors available to answer any questions that you may have. And I do know that that was a very quick overview of the summer program. But I will now pass it along to my colleague, David, to discuss the application process. And then again, we'll end on a quick Q&A.
So as David was saying, our application is available online at summer.sps.columbia.edu. The application comes with an $80 application fee, but however, we do have a fee waiver code for individuals who attended this webinar, which you can see on the screen. It is SUMMSPS. That is the code for the fee waiver. So please be sure to take note of that. This is applicable to applications to Columbia summer sessions only. With the exception of our Arts in the Summer application, all other programs require the following as a minimum. You may note that a personal statement, a statement of academic purpose, is not mentioned here. An SOP is required for some programs, like our summer certs, but not for others. So please be sure to check the requirements for your specific program of interest. Applicants with domestic coursework for the summer 2022 session must provide unofficial academic transcripts to our admissions team so they can begin the review process. Official transcripts will be submitted electronically after your admission. Okay. Applicants with international coursework applying to the programs listed here must provide official academic transcripts to our admissions team to begin the review process. Applicants must provide official transcripts that include an official language translation if the institutions attended do not issue transcripts in English. Official transcripts must be sent electronically directly from the institution to our admissions team at transcripts@sps.columbia.edu. Okay, and then applicants with international coursework applying to the programs listed on this page must provide a WES course by course evaluation to our admissions team to begin their process. So with the exception of undergraduate visiting program, applicants with international coursework must submit a WES course by course evaluation, which includes all of your international study. When you do this will depend on the program you apply to. As I mentioned, if you apply to either of the CPAs or certificate programs, the WES is required for review. Our post-bac and graduate visiting programs require the WES evaluation upon admissions. According to the WES website, evaluations should be completed in 7 business days after receipt, review, and approval of all documents, and payment in full for the evaluation. However, there are many moving parts to this evaluation process, so please make sure that you plan accordingly around application deadlines. We do have English language proficiencies to be considered for admissions. Students must be comfortable with rapid and idiomatic spoken English. Students whose native language is not English must include proof of English proficiency. SPS accepts the following exams require a minimum of 100 on the TOEFL and 7 on the IELTS to be considered. Undergraduate visiting applicants can also submit Duolingo scores in lieu of the TOEFL and IELTS. If the language of instruction of your undergraduate degree conferring institution is in English and you completed 2 or more years at the institution, you need not to take further steps to prove proficiency. However, if your undergraduate education is not conducted in English or you've completed fewer than 2 years at your degree conferring institution where English was the language of instruction, you must provide official scores on the TOEFLs and IELTS. And again, we do have our Q&A box, and David here can also help in the Q&A box to type out those responses. Okay, so we do have some important dates coming up. Again, these are all of our deadlines. As you can see, we did pass our Session A international deadline, but there is still time for international applicants to apply for our Session B courses, and that deadline is on May 2nd. Our final deadline for all Session A courses is coming up on April 11th. And all of these deadlines and dates are also included on our website. Once your application is complete, it can take up to 2 to 3 weeks to receive a decision. Students will receive a decision notification via email and must log into their application portal to view their decision. You must submit an enrollment form available on your application dashboard and reply yes to confirm enrollment. All students applying to one of our summer certificates must place an enrollment deposit before registration information is emailed. Next steps about registration will be emailed to all committed students, and that process has begun for students who are already registered and committed. Okay, and then just some next steps. If you'd like to speak with an admissions counselor after the session, you can begin by reaching out to them via email. They also offer one-on-one appointments, and links to these appointments can be found across the various program pages on our site. If you're not sure where to start, please reach out to them and just let them know what you're interested in doing, and you guys can work with them from there. And as you can see on the screen, you can email them at summersessions@columbia.edu. Okay, and the final step here is in your research process. If you feel confident, just apply, and you can find that on our website. If you look at the top right corner of the screenshot, we do have an apply button right there and also right down here. And with that, that does conclude our very brief summer program and admissions portions of today's webinar. So if you have any questions for Brett or David, please submit them into the Q&A box now. And if anyone has anything that I may have missed, please chime in. Okay, our first question is, are there financial aid or scholarships for the summer program? At this time, no, we do not offer scholarship options. You can explore some financial aid opportunities, or maybe just how you want to try to work out the tuition payments through the university's finance website, which I will get a link for you in just a moment.
So I see David has actually posted the link to the financial services, Megan, which is great. Thank you, David. And to answer the next question, so we do have a prospective visiting student asking about prerequisites, which is actually a great question, especially as Dr. Erden noted, their course specifically does have prerequisites of statistics courses. And of course, as a visiting student, you haven't taken previous courses at Columbia, we can assume. So actually, in this case, you would just work with our advising team. At the time that you are admitted to Columbia as a visiting student, you'll be more or less assigned an advisor who will work closely with as you do register classes. And if you find that a class that you're interested in does have a prerequisite, you'll just work with them to make sure that the courses that you've taken at your home university does align with what is necessary for the class at Columbia, in which case you'll be welcome to take the class. And if you do have any specific classes about, or specific questions about a class, please feel free to reach out to us at summersessions@columbia.edu. And one thing I also wanted to note, which Megan, I believe, did briefly mention, but I did not, is that registration is open for our summer classes. Registration opened on March 1st. So it's been open for more or less about 3 weeks at this time. So just keep in mind that as students do register leading up to the start of summer, some summer classes may find themselves full. So it's best just to keep a couple alternate classes that you may be interested in the back of your mind as you do work through the application process. and let that kind of be a guiding force to push you to submit your application sooner rather than later, as you will find that more and more classes do end up filling up.
I can answer this question. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Apologies for that. So if you are a naturalized US citizen, but you have completed your education overseas, if you have completed your undergraduate degree where English was the language of instruction, that would be fine for a waiver. If you have not taken any of your classes in English, you may still be required to complete an English language test, but any of your education that's been taken outside the United States, you will have to provide a WES evaluation for.
Okay, I just want to give everyone another moment to submit any questions they may have for the summer team or for our admissions team. So please submit anything you have. In the meantime, I do want to highlight that we have another, and it's our final installment of our lecture preview series. It's coming up on April 5th. We will be previewing evolutionary psychology with Dr. Lawrence Ian Reed. That will be happening at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and we would love for you guys to join us there as well.
And we do have a question asking about course syllabi. So if you do require a syllabus, as many students who are visiting and want to take classes for credit at their home institution, or take classes for credit and bring that credit back to their home institution, a lot of times they do require a syllabus on record. You can just submit that request to summersessions@columbia.edu, and we will get in touch with either the instructor or the department and make sure to get that syllabus to you. And the deadline to drop classes. So we do have all of the dates listed on our website. That includes add drop periods. So the first week of classes, you have the opportunity, to add additional classes or drop classes as you deem fit for a full refund.
I think we have a question about the advantage of applying sooner. Students asking, for instance, if you apply sooner and you're admitted, will you be put in touch with your advisor to select classes sooner? Yes, that's exactly it. If you apply sooner and get through the application and you commit, you'll then start being in communication with your advisor who can help you select courses. As Brett mentioned earlier, the registration has already opened for our summer courses, so classes are filling. We do have wait lists, but it's kind of first come, first serve. So as soon as you apply and meet with your advisor, you can start registering for classes then.
We also have a question about summer housing. So summer housing is not handled directly through our office, but through Columbia Housing proper. They will open up applications for summer housing shortly. It's a very simple application process, just providing your intent to stay on campus, and housing is available for summer students.
And just to add to that, Brett, commuters are welcome. So if you are in the New York area or you have friends or family you can stay with, you can just enroll as a commuter.
Okay, and we will make a final call here for any extra questions that you may have. And again, just to give you guys another reminder, our final lecture preview of the series will be on April 5th at 12 p.m. on evolutionary psychology. Okay. And if that is it, I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. Apologies for a little hiccup earlier, but I think we all worked it out great. Special thanks to Dr. Erden, who took time out of her schedule to come and give a presentation on her course today. And thank you all for showing your interest. Have a great afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, and we hope to hear from you.